Our next presenter is the Honorable Rosemary Minehan. Now, she is First Justice of the Plymouth District Court. She's the chairperson of the District Court Committee on Mental Health and Substance Use. She reviews policy and procedure for District Court jurisdiction of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 1, 2, 3. These matters include evaluation for criminal responsibility and competence to stand trial, commitments for mental health or for inpatient care for alcohol and substance abuse, and authorizing involuntary administration of antipsychotic medication. She also coordinates the development of district court policy and practice among various departments of the Commonwealth and oversees training for the district court judiciary on applying the law to mental health and substance abuse cases. Since 1993, she's presided over mental health hearings at Bridgewater State Hospital and several Department of Mental Health facilities. Her favorite athlete is not a human, it's a horse, American Pharaoh, the Triple Crown winner. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Rosemary Minehan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to take you on a virtual tour of the Massachusetts trial court. So it isn't the trial court of our moms and dads. This is a new and different view of how the criminal justice system is working in Massachusetts and across the country. So as we begin, I'm going to talk today about things like therapeutic justice and specialty courts and targeting certain populations. I'm going to talk about a judiciary that is now substance-informed, trauma-informed, and informed about psychosocial issues that cause behavior. And it's about, unlike the shows that you've seen on TV, and so much of that affects jurors, for example, we know that TV affects jurors. But one of the things that we know is that unlike TV, where the whole thing is solved in 30 minutes, including the advertisements, this is going to be a long journey of an individual going through a specialty session and changing behavior over time. So I have with me here today, what are specialty courts? Specialty courts in Massachusetts, which are proliferating across the landscape, and it's not just in Massachusetts, it's happening all over the country, are sessions, they're specialized sessions that focus on defendants with underlying mental health issues and substance issues, and those issues, those disorders, create an enhanced risk of violence, of recidivism, and long-term addiction to alcohol. It ruins families, it ruins lives, and it also produces in children the kind of trauma when they watch a parent suffering with these addictions, and we are now seeing lots of grandparents coming in, raising grandchildren because the adult children are addicted. We now know that there's, last year, 1,400 people in Massachusetts died of overdoses from opiates. It's the largest addiction crisis in the history of the country, and it's on our doorstep. There are some studies that indicate that there's probably 5 million more people who are going down the road to addiction, that they're starting on pills, they can't get off of the pills, they're not quite sure what to do, they're going back to doctors trying to get refills. We know now that there are two big populations that are affected. A younger population, which gets an opiate substance for pain, sports injury, wisdom teeth extraction. And we see kids leaving the dentist's office with 60 Percocets, a 15-year-old with 60 Percocets from a trusted doc. And those people go quickly to heroin because it is unlikely that a doctor is going to give a healthy 20-year-old continuing sources of synthetic opiate drugs. So they go quickly to heroin because they can't find any more pills. And there's another large group, probably in the 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old range. And those individuals can get drugs quickly. And they can get them over and over again and get refills for those drugs. Interestingly, the highest rate of overdose death is between 40 and 54. So specialty courts, as we can see here, target a special population. So what are the goals of specialty courts? We want to reduce recidivism. We don't want people back into the criminal justice system. And there is a lot of conversation now going on about moving away from the criminal justice system into the behavioral system or just into the psychosocial piece. The problem is that with addiction, and it's addiction to alcohol and other substances, benzodiazepines, spice, for those of you who don't know what spice is, it is not cinnamon and nutmeg. If you ask any 12-year-old what spice is, they will tell you what it is. It's a K2 synthetic drug. They can find it in any convenience store. They can smoke it. It's like smoking a magic marker, really. It does the same horrible things to the brain. And so we have kids often using things called spice or K2. We have to put them on conditions of probation and add no mind-altering substances. So we also want these individuals to increase linkage to services. And we're going to try to provide a continuum of care for these individuals so that when they start in the criminal justice system and they move through it, these individuals will get treatment. What we know is that with regard to this behavior that is substance-induced or mental health-induced, that they commit crimes. There's a criminogenic element to it. They drive cars and they run people over. They steal from family members and friends and employers and people they don't know. They break into houses. So it's not as if we can leave the criminal justice system behind, because overarching this issue is a public trust and confidence in our judicial system. There are victims of these crimes and they expect to be heard. So as we move forward, we need to think about how we deal with both the criminal justice side of it and the psychosocial side of it. So the Massachusetts Trial Court has developed a Center of Excellence, which specialty courts run under the auspices of this Center for Excellence. And it's assisting the trial court, the Center of Excellence, in partnering with agencies and organizing continuum education. These drug courts and mental health courts and veterans courts, this homeless court, are actually targeting populations and raising the level of success. We really want successful outcomes in this particular field. And so as this Center for Excellence, Center of Excellence is beginning, and judges are now going to significant training. And when you look at the team of individuals that are part of our justice system, we have here, for example, the top of it is the Executive Office of the Trial Court, and then below that is an advisory committee. And then University of Massachusetts Medical School has now opened this Center of Excellence, which is informing our courts and our judges what the best practices are. And then under that, Dr. Ira Packer, the center director, has now got a steering committee, and it's assisting the courts in areas of research, development, training, legal support, and outreach. And what is outreach? If you look across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you will see that not all communities have the same services. In Metro Boston, there's a lot of services for individuals. That may not be the case in Western Mass. That may not be the case in Southeastern Mass, by the way, an area that has the highest addictive opiate epidemic use and presentations in emergency rooms than any place in the United States, south coast of Massachusetts. So the Center of Excellence is up and running and informing judges. And one of the things we've learned from someone like Doug Marlowe, who has spoken to judges at length, is there are certain things we need to do when we put people into these specialty courts, and one of them is to tap into the psychological and psychiatric field and use risk assessment tools. So we're not putting the wrong people in drug courts. Because if we do that, if we put the young person who is, for example, drinking beer or smoking marijuana on the beach on a summer day, that individual may, in fact, end up in a drug court and learn some really unpleasant sociopathic behaviors. In other words, we may turn that 18 or 19-year-old who's not a sociopathic person, who isn't really necessarily going to develop an addiction, we may turn that person rapidly into a sociopathic individual or an addicted person by putting them in with the wrong crowd. So that's one of the things that we're training judges not to do in Massachusetts as we move forward. So all of the drug court judges in Massachusetts and probation officers, all of the teams in these drug courts that are running across the state now both have peer mentoring and other judges that come in and explain how do we run these things, and also going to the National Institute for Drug Court Professionals, which is running seminars across the country. Many of them are in Massachusetts, and we use those on a regular basis. So what's the role of the Center for Excellence in Massachusetts? Of course, the center is to provide technical assistance to the drug courts across the state and mental health courts across the state. That includes research. We want to measure outcomes. We want to make sure that we're getting it right. We also want to make sure that we're evaluating ourselves and always increasing the level of our competence in terms of how we deal with this population. And that means training, and it means a lot of training and continuing training for judges, clerks, and other professionals that are linking into this system. And of course, we're looking at research and professional literature review. Overarching all of these sessions, of course, is the Constitution, because that is a very important piece. This is an adversarial system, and attorneys have roles that they have to adhere to in the courtroom, and so do the judges. And the marketing and outreach part of this includes what we call sequential intercept mapping. As I mentioned, not every community has the same resources. So as we're trying to break down silos of community resources, we want to make sure that we tap into the local community to find out what resources are available for that particular drug court. And that sequential intercept mapping is something that every drug court is doing. We did mine in Plymouth. We run a mental health court and a drug court in Plymouth. And we brought together 50 individuals from the local hospital, Beth Israel, Plymouth, which is now opened a behavioral health center, which a $5 million chart grant, which we're using on a regular basis with our mental health court participants. We brought in law enforcement, sheriff, community providers, even the prison system at times. People go through that system and come out the other side. We need to make sure that we are utilizing whatever they have in terms of reentry services so that we have, again, a continuum of care and a continuum of treatment for these individuals. So this next slide, I can't see it on this screen, but this next slide talks about how we've developed a drug court manual for judges, and it's really very comprehensive in that it explains from start to finish what the judges are expected to do, what the individual judge, there are 10 principles of drug court management that are tried and true, and every judge in Massachusetts that runs a mental health court, a drug court, a veterans court understands what those are. And so the specialty team in each drug court is responsible for overseeing the operations of the drug court. And the judge is the leader of that team. Other members may include probation, district attorney, defense attorney, probation officer, clerk, case manager. All of these individuals are part of the team. We meet on a regular basis, and representatives from all of these organizations are part of the team. That doesn't mean that we don't have an adversarial process. Due process protection is front and center on these. When you think about it, most individuals, when they are in the criminal justice system, do not go to prison on the front end of their case. They usually end up in jail after they violated a condition of probation. So individuals that are on probation that for some reason are not able to comply with the condition of probation secondary to a mental illness or secondary to an addiction issue, those individuals end up in the prison system. And that is, by the way, going to inform a lot of how our drug courts operate, what model we use. And those specialty court judges and team members need to know about some of the things that are going on in the world of medicine and some of the things that are going on in terms of our psychosocial research. So judges in mental health courts and drug courts understand the difference between naltrexone and naloxone. Naltrexone, or the injectable long-acting naltrexone, is marketed as Vivitrol, and it works on the D2 receptor of the brain. And we know that's, by the way, that's the Robert De Niro part of the brain as opposed to the Mr. Spock part of the brain. I use this all the time in my mental health court and drug court. We talk about the limbic system and the neocortex. That's partly what we discuss in the session, even with the participants. So the judges need to understand that. Judges need to understand that Suboxone, which is medically assisted treatment, is diverted in the community. So a lot of folks coming back from the prison system are high on Suboxone after they've been in the prison system for months. And they come back to the courtroom, and we can actually test them, urine screen them in the court session, and find out that they actually have high levels of Suboxone in their system. It's marketed inside the system. It's very valuable inside of the prison system. It's worth about $18,000 a month in the prison system on the black market. And that's a medically assisted treatment that is actually working for a lot of folks who are addicted. So we talk a little bit about the drug courts team, and again, we're expected to understand SUD, substance use disorder, or alcohol use disorder, and how addictions work and how drug use works and how individuals are brought through the system and moved on to other better skill sets in terms of how they're going to be proceeding with their lives going forward. And that specialty court team meets on a regular basis, and we discuss these cases as they come forward in our sessions, make sure that we're using best practices with individuals because everyone is unique. Again, the judge in the specialty court team is the leader of that team, and after all of the information coming in from all sources, the judge is going to have to make the decision of what the sanction will be in the event that an individual has either recidivated or has not complied with a condition of probation. So what kind of specialty courts do we have? We have drug courts, we have mental health courts, we have juvenile courts that are opening up with these specialty sessions. We have veterans courts, again, very trauma-informed in terms of how we deal with the participants in a homeless session. 9 more added this year by the legislature. And again, we use evaluative tools such as LSR&R, ASAM, TCUDS. These are psychological tools that assess risk so that we make sure we're putting the right population into drug court. One of the things that I think is the best part of our drug court sessions and our specialty court sessions is that when I started 23 years ago, I was 12, just saying. When I started, we looked across the landscape, and what we saw were silos in the field. We saw the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Public Health, and there was the sheriff over there, and the courts were over there, and the attorneys were over there. And we began to open these silos. I liked the slide, actually, because it shows a silo that's wide open. And that's one of the things we did. And we then sort of created lines of communication among these silos so that now everyone's talking. So that when an individual comes before the court, their trajectory of treatment goes from start to finish, from arrest all the way through the system. And we call those intercepts. This is kind of a hard slide to see, but intercept 1 is when an individual has been arrested. Actually, intercept 0 was my favorite intercepts, which is that they're actually not even interfaced with the court system yet or arrest system. But they get into that system. You know, and you've heard of these diversion programs that exist in law enforcement, where we've heard one in Gloucester that recently individuals can go into the police station, and what happens? They get diverted out of the system before they ever get to court. There's nothing wrong with that. They use that in the mental health system as well. It's a valuable tool to bring a person to treatment, so when someone is profoundly mentally ill in the community, they can either get a ride to the courthouse or a ride to the hospital. And then the second part of the system is initial detention and booking, and then initial appearance in court. Sometimes they get diverted out of the system there. And in Boston Municipal Court, that's where the diversion in the mental health court happens, is in Intercept 2. Intercept 3 is when they've actually gone before the judge, and they're either, you can see the line goes directly into the community, they go on probation, or they go to prison, or they get a split sentence. And Intercept 4 is when there's been some kind of a violation of probation. And Intercept 5 is, what are we doing with them on the tail end of their trajectory through the system, and how are we managing them and giving them tools going forward? Just a couple of, I'm pretty much out of time, but a couple of the things that we're doing is we're targeting high risk, high need. So we don't want to put a low risk, low need individual into these specialty sessions. They might do better without this kind of intense probation supervision. So we're using a lot of resources in terms of the courts and the social service agency. We want to make sure that we are not utilizing those on individuals that don't need it. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we use assessment tools. When I do my drug court, when I conduct a drug court session, I actually have every individual, and I can see their level of risk this week. And so I know where they are. Maybe somebody had a loved one that died. Maybe somebody had a partner that overdosed and died. We had 18 overdoses and 2 deaths in 2 weeks in the town of Plymouth last month. And one was a suicide. That's tough on the individuals in the session. Everybody knows everybody, and these are difficult sessions to run. And I just want to mention that our specialty court structure is that we want to have people engage in this continuum of care so that they don't have breaks in services. I had an individual coming back from a 90-day treatment program, and she went to the next step down, and they said, oh, we don't take anybody in here on benzodiazepines. So they sent her back to court. And in the time she came back to court, which was 1 hour, she eloped, and she overdosed and had a near-fatal overdose. And we had to start all over again. So we want to have no breaks. That includes getting the sheriff on this, making sure the sheriff gets the transport so that we don't have a break in services. I don't want to put them in the car with mom yet. They're not ready. And again, I just want to mention that these individuals, what are we using? We're using GPS devices. We know where they are in real time and past time. We have exclusion zones in those GPS devices, so they're not back in the neighborhood where they're using. We used lots of drug screening, and breathalyzers, home breathalyzers, and random drug screens, which happen all the time. And probation is visiting the houses, going in. These individuals they're right before jail, and they are willing to put up with a lot of this. And we have swift and certain responses to violations of probation. So they know that if they're going to violate probation, there's going to be a very quick response by the judge. We are expanding these, and in 2017, we do expect there'll be 50 specialty court sessions. They work. The evidence is showing us that it works really well, and the numbers were really quite good in terms of how well they are doing, significantly better in terms of specialty court sessions rather than non-specialty court sessions. So I am out of time, but I really do want to thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. A couple questions. Is this just happening in Massachusetts, or is this happening around the country? Is this very unique to this area?
It's happening all over the country, and specialty courts are proliferating in every state in the country. They're doing these everywhere, and there is an overarching federal policy now operated by the National Center for Drug Court Policy right out of the White House that's actually overseeing a lot of the policy that's driven here.
Yeah. So how important is this for example, our Governor Charlie Baker and sheriffs and everybody to kind of be aware of this?
Yeah, they have been great and supported us, the legislature, the governor's office, and we just finished an opiate task force that ran for 16 weeks at the beginning of the year. I was on that task force. It was a wonderful opportunity, again, to open silos and have legislative, executive, and judicial leaders at the table to talk about how we're going to go forward with this population.
How have families who are involved in this responded?
Families really are silent partners here. I can't tell you how many times when I'm in the courtroom, I'm speaking to a young person, and I'm saying, you're going to get out of jail today, but I'm going to put you on a GPS, and I don't want you arguing with your mom at 11 o'clock about going out. So now she's not the bad guy anymore, I'm the bad guy. And they look at me. And the mother they're sort of facing me, and the mom's in the back of the room, and the mother's saying, thank you. Because they don't want to argue with the kids, and they're terrified that they're going to lose these folks and they're going to die of an overdose. So I think the families have been wonderful. And it's great for them, too, because they're getting their loved ones into treatment services. It enhances public safety, as well as it reduces recidivism. And it's much cheaper than putting someone in a psychiatric unit for a year or jail for a year. So it's, for those of the individuals who are worried about the tax money, it's a lot cheaper to have community-based services.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Seems like everybody's on board, but anybody who finds fault in this, any particular groups that, you know?
I think because it works across a wide bandwidth of government entities, it's much less expensive. And frankly, the outcomes are much better if individuals are put into long-term treatment. And when they come out, they have better skill sets on the way out than they did on the way in. We hope, in our drug court, it's about 16 months from start to finish, where they go from really not having any skill sets to getting really what we would call good skill sets about learning changes in behavior. One of them said to me, I had to change everything but my name. I had to change my phone. I had to change my friends. I had to change the people I spent time with. I had to change everything but my name. And that means that person has insight into the behaviors that got him into trouble in the first place. So.
All right, thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.